All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Delayed Offside. I'm taking over hosting duties today because our fearless leader, Baron, is not here today. And you know, Sanjay, I got criticized a little bit last week for my lame excuse for not attending the show. And, this week, Adam's not here either, but he has a legitimate excuse as to why he's not here. We can't blame him for that one.
Yeah.
But Baron, he told us that he has something. There's something going on all week. And, usually when someone is generic like that, I usually think, it's probably something personal. Don't pry into it or anything like that. But, this is actually like the third or fourth time this year he's used something as his excuse. And I was starting to think, you know what? I bet you it's something like really embarrassing that he doesn't want to tell us what it is, but yet he doesn't want to lie and just say he's sick or something like that. So I was kind of like thinking, what could it be? What could it be? Like, it has to be something like, it's 90 Day Fiance night at the Zeroni house, and there's no way he's going to miss that episode, right?
100%. Yeah.
Your family, you know him even better than I do. Any ideas as to what that could be?
90 Day Fiance is a good one. I'm just trying to think of like what he could be doing that's more fun than this. The only other thing I can think of is, he doubles as a bouncer at a bar. He's got that like tough look at him, and he's trying to make a little extra cash. He's got jersey problems that he's buying jerseys all the time, and he just needs to make that extra cash. So he's a bouncer at a biker bar in Regina, and
to pay for all the jerseys.
Yeah, man, it's like, and he takes cash only. Like if Canada Revenue Agency's watching this, I have to audit his taxes because it's always cash under the table for him to be that bouncer lifestyle.
Like, honestly, in my mind, like when I was hearing him say something, he's doing something, I honestly thought that scene in the Grinch, the Jim Carrey Grinch movie, where he had like that schedule. He's like, 7:00, wallow in self-pity, 7:30, staring to the abyss. I'm booked. Yeah. I can totally see him doing something like that, right? That's exactly what his schedule is like. Absolutely nothing. But enough about Baron. Let's get into today's episode. And Sanjay, you've got to be loving life right now. You're Calgary Flames. I have to say, they're the hottest team in hockey right now. They just won their 10th straight at home, which ties a franchise record. And they also became the first team in NHL history to sweep a homestand of 7 or more games. And I saw a stat, they've outscored their opponents 42-15 during that 10-game stretch, which is insane. Right now, they're first in the Pacific. They're 4 points up on Vegas with still 2 games in hand. So they're looking really good. Overall in the league, 8th in point percentage, like they're doing fantastic. So Sanjay, like, what are you seeing with the Flames? Why are they racking up all these wins?
After hearing all that like glowing review about the Flames and stuff, I think I like to hear it again. Like, I'm just going to listen to this episode on repeat that little bit in the off season.
If they ever go into a slump, you can just repeat that over and over. Remember, times were good.
Exactly. Yeah. What do I think it is? Honestly, I think they're getting, they've always kind of been playing this way all season where they're out shooting teams, they're getting more chances, but their secondary scoring and their scoring from the blue line wasn't there earlier in the season. Now, they were doing good earlier in the season, but not like how they've been the last 10 games. And I think, they're finally getting that secondary scoring. Toffoli's, he's come alive. And Monahan's come alive as well. He got a nice one yesterday, and their D are really pinching in and helping out. So it's taking a lot of pressure out of the Gaudreau, Tkachuk, Lindholm line. But like, they're still producing at an insane rate as well. So it's just everyone seems to be chipping in, and they're not satisfied. Like years past, they'd be like, okay, well, we've won 5 in a row. Maybe we'll lay an egg on this time. But this year, it seems like they're not even satisfied with 10 in a row. You listen to Daryl Sutter's comments in the press conference.
I heard, yeah.
So it doesn't mean anything unless it's the playoffs. And it's true. Like,
what did he say about ago, the cushion? It's a pillow full of feathers or something like that.
He's a wise old veteran, that Daryl Sutter.
I wish we had Adam here so he could do some Sutter quotes and
his Sutterisms. I think he secretly wants Sutter to coach the Oilers. And he's like subtly trying to get him in there.
You mentioned that first line still producing extremely well, and like the one guy who's just been on fire is Lindholm.
Yeah.
The record that the Flames have just tied isn't the only record that's been reached. Lindholm extended his goal streak to 8 games. That also ties a franchise record with Gary Roberts and Kent Nielsen. I also read 3 straight game-winning goals, and that ties Al McInnes and Sean Monahan. So, they are doing fantastic, and Lindholm is doing amazing. And like a criticism going into this season, I remember for Calgary was like Calgary just doesn't have a true elite number one centerman. Mm-hmm. Do you think that Lindholm has proven everyone wrong? Do you think he is that?
100%. You look at centerman that can play 200-foot game, can score, can assist, can play on the power play, but can also play on the penalty kill. There's not a lot of them. Like, Patrice Bergeron is the one that always comes to mind. He's a pretty damn good center in Boston, and Lindholm is, kind of matching him. Like, I think Lindholm should get some consideration for the Selke Award this year. If you look at the plus minus that he's had, the 200-foot game that he plays, I mentioned he's on the penalty kill as well, and the penalty kill has been really good. I think, he definitely needs Selke consideration, and number one center. There's not a lot of centers that are outproducing Lindholm at this point, maybe a couple, but the list is a lot shorter than it was last year. So he's really upped his game this year.
Yeah, there's actually been a lot of chatter on social media as of yesterday about Lindholm being the front runner for the Selke. And his name wasn't one that I really thought of when we did our halfway point awards show. We were naming our finalists or front runners for the award, and I didn't really have Lindholm in my top 3, but I think he's definitely moved his way up there with his play.
What was number 1 Bunting, number 2 Matthews,
no.
number 3 Marner?
No, I had Bergeron at number 1, and I'm sure he's still up there too. But yeah, I mean, if you're producing, the thing with the Selke is, you have to not only be good defensively, but put up good offensive numbers too, right? And now that Lindholm is just on fire and putting up offense as well as good defensive stats, that's going to help his case for sure. Yeah, although Matthews, I think should be in consideration too. I'm just going to throw that in there.
You had to get that in there. I think Calgary kind of suffers from being in the West Coast, so a lot of the writers in the East Coast don't really watch the Flames. When it comes time to award season, I may be biased because I watch all the games or most of the games, but it's just sometimes you see like people and it's like it's the same people that are being nominated, and then you see Lindholm and he's having an incredible season, and it's like let's push for him. Like I think he deserves it. Or like Markstrom for the Vezina. Like I've seen a lot of people have their like Vezina award predictions and stuff, and he wasn't like top 3 and stuff. And I'm like, what does this guy have to do to make your top 3? Like.
Yeah, his play kind of seemed to dip a little bit in the middle of the season, just a tiny bit. He was still really good. But I remember at the beginning of the season, he was on fire and had all those shutouts. And then it felt like it dipped a little, like right around like that halfway point when people are starting the Vezina talk. But now it's gone. He's on fire again, right? And I think he's definitely up there. But how many shutouts does he have this season?
I think he has 8 and the team has like 10, which is pretty crazy.
Wow. Yeah, no, the team is phenomenal defensively, absolutely phenomenal defensively. I kind of also want to talk about that first line a little bit more, because I think they really need to be heaped upon with some of this praise.
Absolutely.
Did you know that since the All-Star break, Lindholm, Tkachuk, Gaudreau are all top 10 in the league in points?
Ooh.
Here's a question for you. Yeah, all 3 of them top 10 in the league in points since the All-Star break. Absolutely on fire. Do you think they are the best line in hockey?
Oh, do I think they're the best line in hockey? Well, that's a tough question. Me personally, yes. Non-biased, yes. But realistically,
of course, non-biased.
No, of course, 100%.
We are professionals here. We don't put our bias into anything.
No, not at all. Not at all. This isn't like a fan thing. Like there's no Flames jerseys behind me, it's hard to say who else is up there. I know, 300 kilometers up north, if McDavid and Draisaitl are on a line together, doesn't even matter who the third person is. That's a pretty damn good line. And then besides them, Florida has a pretty good top line, Toronto, Tampa Bay. So I think they're in the mix. I don't think they're number one yet. I mean, you make your name or you make your hay in the playoffs, and they haven't done anything in the playoffs yet.
Of
So
course. Yeah.
I'll say no, but I think they're in the mix. And if they have a good playoff run, then they might be.
That's fair. Well, playoffs. That's fair. I mean, Toronto goes through the same thing, like great regular season team, and then playoffs. Some of their big guns have disappeared the past couple of playoff runs. But in terms of the regular season, Sanjay, I'll argue they are the best line in the league this season. I was going through some stats. So among all the lines that have played at least 150 minutes together, they're third best in expected goals percentage this season and fourth in actual goals percentage. And there's no other first line that has put up those kinds of numbers. Their closest, like in second, I would say, is the Toronto's Bunting, Matthews, Marner line. They're close second. And I mean, there's some other good lines that, have put up great numbers too. Like there's Boston's Perfection line has done really well. San Jose's Meyer Hurdle Barabanov line, surprisingly, is like right up there. And then like you already talked about like McDavid and not Draisaitl, because they haven't played as much together as McDavid, and Hyman and Puyarvi have done fairly well together too. But I tell you what, like out of all those lines, in terms of looking at both expected goals and actual goals scored for and against, I gotta say they're the top line. And I tell you what else, they might also have the second best line in the league as well, that Mangiapane, Backlund, Coleman line. They're right up there too. They were first in expected goals percentage and sixth in goals percentage. Wow. So I mean, when you have two of the, possibly the best line, top line in hockey, and possibly one of, if not the best second line in hockey, things are looking pretty good. Yeah. And then you were saying that Toffoli's looking pretty good on that third line and might add some depth on that third line and improve that depth. You're saying he's done pretty well so far?
Yeah, from what I've seen. I mean, he scored that beautiful goal his first game, but they're kind of bringing him along slowly. Like they were talking about it. He's only averaging in Calgary like 13, 12 minutes a game the last couple of games. And so they're really trying to bring him in slowly, not put too much on his plate. And they actually switched it up last game where they took Dubé off that line and put in Lucic. So it was Lucic, right, Monahan, and Toffoli, and a little bit slow for that line, but a little bit bigger, right? And when you're playing a team like Winnipeg, has like a little bit bigger bodies and stuff, you kind of need that. And I thought they did pretty good last game, and Toffoli iced it with the empty netter. So I've been happy with him since he's come over. I think he definitely provides a little bit of spark to that third line. Monahan's look better, and he plays first power play minutes. So what more could you ask for from your third line players than that?
Is that a line that they can throw it against other top lines as well? Like, are they pretty good defensively? I know Toffoli has good like two-way play. Is Monahan usually a penalty killer or defensive guy?
Not usually, no, but he has really improved in that area. When he first came in the league, I would say no way, but they really have like a couple of forward lines that they can put out there. Like, as we mentioned, Lindholm, but also Matthew Tkachuk is very good, dependable player, 200 feet on the ice. And you got Mangiapane, Backlund, Coleman, Toffoli is that type of player. Dubé is that type of player. So really, they have two solid lines that could just grind away the last 6 minutes of a hockey game with a 1-goal lead. And, you'd maybe get like 2 shots at the end. So, it's hard to not get excited. I mean, I've been burned a couple of years ago when they finished first in the West and then lost to Colorado in 5. So I was a little bit like, I don't want to like jump. So
you're tempering your expectations this time around. You don't want to get too excited.
Yeah, I mean, this time I think we have a better goaltender. I think Markstrom is better than Smith, although Smith played really well that playoff, so I can't hang that on him. But Sutter, I think he's a tremendous coach, and I think he's a much better coach than Bill Peters. So I think he can get over the hump. Hopefully get over the hump, because it's been since 2004. I've only seen them win 1 playoff series. So it would be, 2 if you include the playing against Winnipeg. Yeah, 2. So I mean, it's not like it's like that much. but it's more than Toronto, I guess. So I'll take it at this point.
Exactly. You have nothing to complain about.
Yeah.
Stop your bitching.
I think it's like what any 20-year-old in Toronto, if you're 21 and under, you don't remember them winning a playoff series, right? Because
that can't be true.
Because I mean, the last one was 2004.
Oh, maybe. No, 20. Yeah, I guess.
18
Yeah,
years,
you're probably
right? And
right.
you probably don't remember when you're 3.
That's crazy. It's been that long,
right?
It's crazy. And like, I don't want to move on to Toronto. I was going to just say, like, I remember back then, I just expected them to always make the playoffs and win a round of the playoffs. They had done it quite well in the 90s and early 2000s. But back to Calgary with the playoffs. So we kind of got into this playoff talk. This is kind of where I want to finish this talk about the Flames. Going into the season, everyone was talking about Colorado Avalanche, Vegas Golden Knights. Anytime you talked about a team going to the Cup final, winning the Cup in the West, it was those two teams really that everyone was talking about. Do you think the Flames have joined that conversation now? Do you think they are of the same level as those two other clubs? Do you think they are a Stanley Cup contender?
Absolutely. You put them, if they win the division, that means they get home ice advantage until the Western final, because I don't think they're going to catch Colorado, so they'll probably finish second. And you just mentioned they won 7 straight at home. They're a tough team to play at home, and they're a tough team to play on the road. But I think absolutely they've reached that conversation. I mean, if not now, what else more do they need to do? I tell you what, if you're any other team in the West, you don't want to play that team, right? Like, they'll come at you 60 minutes in a 7-game series, and with Daryl Sutter hockey, like, it's going to be rough. And the whistles go away a little bit in the playoffs, and you look at their lineup, they can play that kind of gritty game with Lucic.
Yeah, they play it the right way for sure.
Yeah, a full, and they have like skill. They're kind of like, I don't want to jinx it, but like, they're kind of like the most complete team I've seen Calgary have, like, ever in my life. And that includes 04. Like, if you go back to 04, there really was like Iginla, Kiprusoff, and then like everyone else that played above
just the grinders,
their means. But this team, you look at is like Chris Simon, Craig Conroy, players like that are like Martin Jelena, good players, but not all-star Hall of Fame caliber players. And you look at this roster, and not Hall of Fame, but like, there's so many players that
not yet anyways.
In contention for awards. We weren't talking about anyone in 04 about could Conroy win this award or anything. It was just, could Iggy and Kiprusoff win an award? Other than that, there was no one else that would be up for one. Now you've got several players that could be up for one. So I think this is the most complete team I've seen the Flames in my lifetime, and it's an exciting time. I think absolutely, they're not the favorite to win the West. I still think that's Colorado. Vegas, we'll have to see how Mark Stone is, if he's magically healed come playoff time.
Yeah, and what kind of Jack Eichel they get as well, right? Like, he's only played a couple games.
Yeah, so I mean, I think Vegas is up there. I think those 3, and then the one thing though I do like Calgary's a little bit better than Colorado is their playoffs playing. Like, Colorado will have to play more teams in the Central, and that is such a tough division. Like, Minnesota's not an easy out. St. Louis is not, Nashville's not. So, that's a very tough division.
Yeah, and I wonder if Colorado has the same kind of grit that in defensive. I mean, they are a good defensive team, but I don't know if they're just as gritty maybe as Calgary is. Like, they have a lot of all-stars on that team and a lot of firepower, but I feel like they're almost kind of like the Leafs in that sense, in terms of, like, they're not an overly physical team, right? And so that's kind of, there's always been a debate, do you need to have grit in the playoffs? And I guess, teams like Colorado and Toronto are going to prove that no, you don't, but I guess we'll see. And then when you're talking about like the most complete team you've seen, Sanjay, like they really are. Like, I was taking a look at their team stats, and they're top 5 in almost all categories. You look at like offense at 5-on-5 and defense, goaltending, the penalty kill, their overall plus minus possession, like all of that's top 5. Like, the only thing that's not is their power play. And that's just outside the top 10. Like, it's not even bad, right? It's still good. So I mean, this team's legit, and I think they're a contender as well for sure.
So now we know why Adam and Baron didn't join this episode.
They knew what we were going to be talking about. And
Yeah.
they didn't want to get sick to their stomach with all this heaping praise on the Flames, right?
Yeah. If Edmonton was on a 10-game win streak, they won 5 in a row and they were all ready to talk about it. And then after
they were all
lost
going
to
to make
Minnesota,
it. Yeah.
They're like, I'm sorry, I can't make it.
And they put up that stinker, and all of a sudden now there's something that comes up, right? So let's go to another team that put up a stinker the other night. That's the Toronto Maple Leafs. I want to talk about that game, but there was some news that came out just before that. A few days ago, they traded Nick Ritchie to the Arizona Coyotes for Ilya Labushkin, Ryan Dzingel, who's since been claimed off of waivers by San Jose because the Leafs can't get anyone through waivers ever.
Right.
And either the 3rd round pick in 2023 or the 2nd round pick in 2025. So Sanjay, when you heard about this trade, what were your thoughts?
To be honest with you, I didn't know much about these guys, but reading up on them, the defenseman, I can't pronounce his name. What is it? Labushkin?
Yeah, I had to look that up too. I've never heard of the guy until this trade.
No, but apparently he is like a big physical defenseman.
Right shot too.
Right shot. So kind of what the Leafs need. Depending if Muzzin, is he out? Is he in? For the come playoff time, isn't he?
He's injured, right? Or he got injured last game. I had to stay in Montreal for analysis. Yeah. I think he's not playing tonight. So we'll see how long he's out for.
Yeah, I think he's one of those defensemen that you need in a long playoff run. Like defensemen, they take a lot of wear and tear come playoff time, and you need some of those like unsung heroes on your bottom pairing, because if you get a long overtime game where you play 2-3 overtime in a row and then you got to play in a couple days, you can't just rely on your top pairing. So I think he's going to fill a nice role for the Leafs, and he's going to be an important part come playoff time.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Leafs, where they struggle is clearing the front of the net. They have a lot of smallish defensemen who can move the puck really well, but especially come playoff time, you need some big nasty defensemen to clear that net front. And other than Muzzin, they really don't have a lot of physical guys. Like I've seen Sandin lay the body now and then, but he's actually a smallish guy. He doesn't have the body mass. This guy Labushkin, 6'2", I think he was like close to 210. So he definitely had some size. He's not going to provide any offense, but I guess he's pretty good defensively. So that's great. I think he's going to be more of a 3rd pairing guy in the long haul here. I'm sure he'll get some, like whenever Muzzin comes back, I'm sure he'll get some playing time on that 2nd pairing beside Muzzin, just to see how that goes, because like obviously the Muzzin Hall pairing just has not worked out this season for whatever reason, which has been very disappointing. So I'm sure they're going to give him a shot there, at least for now too, until Dubas can work his magic and get someone else to pair with Muzzin on that 2nd line. But yeah, I mean, that's great. Like just the fact that they got rid of Nick Ritchie's contract is a win. 2.5 mil off the books. They bring in a guy who I can't remember what Labushkin makes, like 1.3 million or something like that. So you're shedding salary cap, but not only did they shed salary cap, and I knew they'd have to like lose a pick or a prospect or something to do that, but they actually brought in a valuable piece that the Leafs could use for a push for the playoffs and then into the playoffs. So I'm happy with that. I mean, if it ends up being a 2nd round pick, and I think it's 2025, I think I said, I mean, that's a pretty harsh price to pay, but I mean, that's so far down in the distance. Exactly. Like everyone's saying, like Dubas might not even be the GM of the Leafs by then. So, that's in future years problems. But that helps solve the problem right now, because I mean, they need to make some moves on the defensive side. Like I said, Muzzin Hall just hasn't worked out. And, going into this season, that was like the one area that I was not worried about was defense. They were so good last year defensively. And I was thinking, okay, just shore up that top 6, like get a top 6 forward at the trade deadline, like a good sniper, like a Philip Forsberg or a JT Miller or someone like that. And then we're set, right? Because Muzzin Hall has been steady for like 2 years, like ever since they've been put together. But for whatever reason, like Muzzin has looked brutal. Hall hasn't looked good with Muzzin. So I'm not sure what Dubas is going to do, but we'll see if Labushkin can help, and if he can play in top 4, great. But I'm expecting he'll be bottom pairing. But the guy going back the other way, Nick Ritchie, why do you think, Sanjay, it didn't work out for him in Toronto?
I think it wasn't the right fit. If you look at his playing style, he's more of like a big body kind of guy. And I think Toronto, you look at their offensive players, they're more skilled. You know what I mean? Like they need like skilled players to play with. And Richie he's more of a bottom six forward. And, there's nothing wrong with that. He can have a nice, carve out a nice career as a bottom six forward, but I think, expectations might've been too high. Like this kid's never going to score 30 goals in the league.
No.
But he's going to hit, he's going to fight, and he's going to wreak havoc in the bottom six. So, I just think why it didn't work out. I think the expectations were that this guy was going to come in and perform like his draft position, because he was drafted 8th overall or like 10th overall. Like he was a high first round pick, but after
Nylander, which Don Cherry wasn't happy about. But
yeah, I remember that. Well, good thing he doesn't pick for the Leafs.
Yeah, I agree. Like when we picked him up, or when Dubas picked him up, I didn't have anything to do with that. I like the thing was like Dubas, hit a home run with a lot of his guys that were not necessarily a guaranteed player. He took some chances and he hit a home run with most of them. But unfortunately, the two guys that he paid the most money to in Richie and Mrazek are the two most disappointing ones he picked up, unfortunately. Yeah. When he got Richie, I remember everyone on Twitter saying, "Oh my, like he's going to replace Hyman. He's going to be better than Hyman." And I remember looking at his stats, being like, "Really? Like he puts up third line production." Like he played on the second line with David Krejci in Boston. He like his career high, I think, was like 15 goals or something like that. I'm like, this guy's going to be our top line wiener. Like, I guess we'll see. I was skeptical about Bunting too, and he's been phenomenal there. So, you just never know. Right. But I mean, Richie got every opportunity on that line with Matthews and Marner, but he's just not skilled enough. Whereas Bunting, you can see skill there along with the grit, and Richie's just not that. And, I thought he actually looked really good on the fourth line, but you can't pay a fourth liner $2.5 million. And I think he's more of a third line guy, but he's not defensively sound. And unfortunately, it's just not a fit with the Leafs, because the Leafs third line is like a legit like shut down line that they're going to start in the defensive zone, take on the top lines. And that way they can give Tavares' line and Matthews' line more time in the offensive zone. And if you put Richie on that line, you're going to struggle to stop the other team. So it didn't work out. Hopefully it works out better for him in Arizona. I know my dad is really hoping it does, because he picked him in our fantasy pool draft, because he heard he was going to play with Matthews and Marner, and he thought he was all crafty picking Nick Ritchie, and he's been scratched like so many games this season. So we'll see if he gets some playing time and get some points for him.
You brought up a good point about, you're saying the fourth line player can't be making like $2.5 million. He can't, because their top line players are making 10 million. Like, how many of your first two lines, like what's your combined salary of the first two lines for the Leafs? That's like what, 50 million? Like,
well, just like three of them alone is over 30 million. So
yeah. And then if you look at a team like Calgary, like Gaudreau, Lindholm, and Tkachuk, we talked about, is it the best line of hockey? I think their combined salary is like 15 million.
Yeah.
So you can have a Lucic on the fourth line at 5 million.
Is that what he's making?
I think he's making like 5 mil. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Maybe a little less, maybe 4.5, because I know Edmonton's eating some of that salary. But yeah, he's making like 4.5 to 5 million for this year and next year as well.
Wow. Yikes. Yeah. Well, you're lucky everyone else is producing, I guess, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this offseason they got to sign Gaudreau and Tkachuk, and the way things are going, Gaudreau should be nominated for the Hart Trophy, and like, has a Hart Trophy nominee or winner ever been a free agent the year after? I don't know. I can't remember it happening, but
I can't either.
Expect him to get 12 million a season if he keeps this up.
You think he's going to get that?
If he hits the free market, he absolutely will. Yeah. Cause like, look at how many people like New York Rangers, who did they sign? Panarin's making like what, 10, 11 mil.
Yeah.
You look at Tampa Bay, like some of those players. So I think, if he hits the free agent market and you're a team like Philadelphia, who wants to kind of rebuild, or New Jersey, kind of where he's from, absolutely, they have salary cap room. They would absolutely splash that cash at him and say,
Interesting.
come play with us.
So I would think my argument against, like, if I'm the GM, I would say, yeah, like, you had a phenomenal season. You're going to get paid for sure. But like 12 million, man, like, you've had two very disappointing seasons prior to this. You know, you haven't exactly been Mr. Consistency over your time. Like, what do you have? Like, was it like 94 points like 3 seasons ago? And then that dropped to like below a point per game. And then I can't remember what he got last year, but it wasn't a point per game either. No. And then this season, all of a sudden he's on fire again. So
yeah, I remember he was like close to getting 100, because it was a big deal, because no Flame has got 100 points since like,
ever.
Well, they have, but it's been like since the 90s. No, I think Al McInnes got 100 points as a defenseman, but I think it might have been Fleury or Noondike or McInnes. Like, it's been 30 years since the Flame got 100 points. Like, Ginla never hit it. He came close a number of years, but he just couldn't get it. So
yeah, really, well, I mean, there was a stretch there where like you would only get maybe 1, maybe 2 players who would hit 100 points. Like, it was rough for a little bit.
Ginla won the Art Ross with 94, and he was like 6 or 7 ahead of, like, no one else had more than like 82 that year. Like, it was crazy.
That year that Jamie Benn, and this was after the lockout, but yeah, that year Jamie Benn won, he only had like 85 points or 86 points. Like, he wasn't even in the 90s. Yeah. So, I mean, there's been some rough stretches for offense for sure.
Yeah.
One other guy I want to talk about real quick is a guy that the Leafs didn't want to lose, but have lost twice now, and that's Adam Brooks. So I'm going to admit I was wrong about this guy at the beginning of the season. My prediction for him was that he'd become a legit 4th line center for Montreal and produce like 35 points. Like, I was pissed that the Leafs didn't start him as their 4th line center and put him on waivers and lost him to Montreal. But he only played 4 games for Montreal. Then he was claimed by Vegas, played 7 games for them, claimed by Toronto recently. I was all pumped. They put him on waivers to send him down to the Marlies, and now he's been claimed by Winnipeg. So, I mean, it's been a chaotic season for him.
Yeah.
Do you think
unpack your bags, kid?
I know, right? Like, well, he said, I saw that. He said in an interview, like, I didn't start like packing up and heading to Toronto until like I knew for sure that I was getting through waivers. So I think he knew maybe it was coming. Unfortunately, it happened. Well, maybe not unfortunately. We'll see. It sounds like he's going to get a kind of a legit shot in Winnipeg. Do you think he might find a home there, Sanjay?
Yeah, I mean, Winnipeg's kind of struggling. So, you know, they're way below expectations at this point. Like, everyone thought they would at least be contending for a playoff spot, and now they're more likely to be in the draft lottery. So, why not give the guy a shot, see what he can do. Winnipeg needs something to kickstart that team, because, you know, if they don't make the playoffs, they're going to be losing some of their veterans, right? Like, with the trade deadline coming around, will they look at moving Stastny, look at moving a Scheifele or a Wheeler type move? And Brooks could fill that role until, you know, the younger players come in and take their spot. So
that'd be huge.
I'd like to. Yeah, I think he should get a chance, and I'd like to see him perform well, just not against the Flames.
It feels like yesterday we were talking about how some experts were calling them the best team in Canada. They've really fallen off. As for Brooks, he's going to, from what I heard, he's going to be playing with Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois on the second line, because they're going through some injury issues right now. So, I mean, this is a huge opportunity for Brooks. With Toronto, Montreal, Vegas, he was playing on their 4th line. But with Winnipeg, he's going to actually get top 6 minutes with some stud players. So, I mean, personally, I hope he makes the most of this opportunity. Like, I'm a big Adam Brooks fan, just because he was a fantastic player for my hometown Regina Pats when they were a powerhouse and had a shot at the Memorial Cup. So I hope he makes the best of his opportunity while those guys are out with injury, and hopefully he can show at the NHL what he can do. I mean, he has put up 11 points in 30 career NHL games, but I mean, that's not a lot of games. So it's hard to really judge how good he really is. But, over the course of an 82 season, that's like 30 points. So that's certainly bottom 6 worthy. So personally, I think he's a legit NHLer. I just don't think he's really had the opportunity to show it yet. So hopefully he proves me right there. And I wish it was with Toronto, but c'est la vie. What can you do?
Did you have a Brooks Toronto jersey? You're gonna get it?
No, I never did. I was going to get one, and then I
Yeah.
thought I'll wait till he actually makes it on the club, like for at least a full season. But like he never got that. He'd be brought up for a few games. The thing is like the Leafs would bring him up, and he played like 2 games or something, and he'd get 2 points, and then he'd be sent back down. And I really did think they were going to give him the 4th line center spot. Because that 4th line with him and Spezza and Thornton, like Spezza and Thornton were floundering last season, and then they put Brooks on that line, and then they were actually doing quite well. So I really thought they were going to give him an opportunity there, but he got beat up by Engvall, and I mean I can't blame the Leafs because Engvall has proven to be very valuable this season too. So the Leafs, it's just one of those things with the Leafs is when you have too many good players, you can't keep them all, and other people want your players, right? Like we can't get anyone through the damn waiver wire. We lost Zingle now. Like all the goaltenders we've ever put through have always been picked up. Like we just can never get anyone through. So I guess it's just one of those things when you're a fantastic team and with so much.
Have you ever seen a waiver wire pickup actually like come through and be like, wow, this player like was
made
legit.
it?
Like, what are they doing on waivers? Like, I can't believe. And then like they just like light it up for your team.
Like we picked him up.
Yeah, or anyone else, like maybe like the Leafs lost him, or someone that you remember that went through waivers that
didn't the Leafs pick up Galchenyuk last season on the waiver wire?
Was he through waivers or was he through a trade?
I can't remember if that was through a trade or through a waiver wire. I'd have to relook that up. Yeah. I'm thinking it might have been picked up on waivers. Well, and if that's the case, like he did pretty good for them, other than that boneheaded play in the playoffs that cost them in overtime.
Yeah.
But before that, he was performing quite well for them. I'd have to look that up and see. I think that was a waiver wire. What about for the Flames? Anyone that they were picked up?
No, like the closest I can think of was Christian Huselius. Like he was on waivers in Florida after the lockout. But then to make the salary cap work, Calgary traded Monador to Florida, even though they could have just had him for free. But with the salary cap, they had to make the money work. And then he ended up being like a top line forward on the Flames for like 3 or 4 years, like producing 60 to 70 points a year, which was really good for Calgary. So that's kind of like the closest I can think of. But most time, like waiver wire pickups, they don't really.
There's a reason they're being put on the waiver wire.
Yeah. Sometimes like, they could come in and provide a role and be like, yeah, this guy can play 10 minutes on the 3rd D pairing or 4th line. But yeah, for the most part, it's very rare that you see a waiver wire pickup make like an immediate drastic impact. Now, I'm sure someone's going to in the comments say, how could you forget about blah, 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 like an obvious answer. But in my head right now, I can't think of any.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I said, there's usually a reason why they're going through the waiver wire. So you would actually think it would happen maybe a little bit more just because of the salary cap constraints that teams are under, and they're kind of forced to put people through the waiver wire that they really don't want to, right? Although, I mean, that's kind of what's happening with the Leafs anyways, is like, if this was back in the day, I'm sure they would keep just a lot of these players on the cap and just have, 10 guys in the press box or however many they're allowed to actually put up there, right? But can't do that. Sorry, what?
I was just saying, the cap, it is good in some ways and it's not good in others. So
yeah, true enough. Okay, well, let's move on. Let's talk some Olympics, man. Team Canada, women's. Okay, you want to talk about the men first?
No. We'll talk with the women. I honestly didn't even watch the men's hockey, so I just wore this just to celebrate because I always like Finland. But no, let's talk about the women's.
No, I want to hear from you. Who is your favorite Team Finland men's hockey player at this year's Olympics?
Teemu Solani's younger brother, Emu Solani.
All right, well, let's start with the women because that I think was the bigger draw. And that was Team Canada taking on the US for the millionth time in the gold medal final, and Team Canada coming ahead. It started pretty late at night. Did you end up staying up to watch it, Sanjay?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe the Flames were playing. I can't remember who they beat. I think they beat the Ducks, and then it was kind of like ending when the women's game was starting. So I was kind of flipping back and forth between the two, but I was watching the women's 100% after the Flames game ended, and most of the women's because the Flames game had gotten out of hand. So I was with the women's team, but it was a good game. It was a good game.
Yeah, I forced myself to stay up. Like I was nodding to sleep by the third period. Like I was
Yeah.
doing the head roll. But I was impressed, man. Like that first game that Canada took on the US, I thought US dominated that game. And I was worried that maybe the US was just that much better than Canada. But I thought Canada, I don't want to say dominated this game, but like really, it felt like they had the edge of play most of the game.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it never really felt out of doubt. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was a 3-2 game. You look at the scoreboard, but it really wasn't a 3-2 game.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, US got like a very late goal at the end with the goalie pull to like get close or whatever. But yeah, no, it was impressive, man. Who are you impressed with in terms of the roster for Team Canada? Who did you like?
Oh, you got to go with Poulin. Like, man, like that girl's incredible. Like, how many goals has she scored in the gold medal games? Like,
3 game-winning gold medal goals.
Yeah, and she's got like 8 goals in gold medal games. Like, that is just insane. Like, she
Clutch.
is. Yeah, like you know how like people used to call Justin Williams like Mr. Game 7?
Yeah.
Well, they should call him like Justin Williams is the male version of Poulin, because like she is like incredible. You know, like she is the eliminator, the terminator, like the gold medal. If you have, you know, a situation do or die game, she's the best.
Yeah, people are starting to say, you know, she is now the best Canadian women's hockey player of all time, like surpassing Hayley Wickenheiser even potentially. And it's hard to argue with that with the success she had. Yeah, I mean, you definitely have to go with her. I mean, Brianne Jenner was obviously very impressive. She won tournament MVP, had the most goals. I actually was really impressed. Like, to be honest, I didn't watch a lot of the tournament. Just the 2 Canada US games. That's all I watched. Because I mean, you kind of knew what the outcome was going to be for those other games. The other woman who really impressed me was Sarah Nurse. She led the entire term with 18 points. She looked dominant in that US game. And I tell you, I think she's proven that, you know, she is the best hockey player in the world with the last name Nurse.
100%. Could not disagree. 100% she is.
I absolutely agree as well, because I actually looked it up after to see if she's actually related to Darnell Nurse. And I guess they're cousins. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, she's definitely the winningest. Well, you know.
Oh, fair enough. Yep, that is true. Yeah. Okay. The other thing I wanted to point out about this game, kind of astounding. So the game averaged 3.54 million viewers in the US, which is more than any NHL game this season, and the second most watched hockey game in the US since 2019. The only game that surpassed that was Game 5 of last year's Stanley Cup final. Wow. Don't know if you heard those numbers before, Sanjay, but if you had, or if you're just hearing for this time, I mean,
first time.
What do you think of that? What do you take away from those numbers?
You know, I think it shows that women's ice hockey is a premier sport in the Winter Olympics. Like, it's a prestige sport. It draws in spectators, and, you know, it kind of transcends hockey. Like, people that don't even pay attention to hockey in the US were watching this game. You know, and it's such like interesting theater and dramatics where it's like a sports story when you have 2 of the best going at it every Olympics, you know, and it's like the build up and you get to see who's the best, Canada or the US. And you kind of like hear about the names of the players in the Olympics, but you don't really like, you don't really like, you know, in the States, I don't know what the numbers are, in the World Championships or stuff like that, but like the Olympics, like these numbers, like this is just such a wonderful audience. Like the numbers are so good because it shows that, you know, the game, women's hockey, is growing. I guarantee in 98 the numbers for the gold medal game for the US and Canada probably weren't as high as they are now.
No, definitely.
And then that also means that more women are probably going to play hockey. More girls that watch it in the States are probably going to play hockey. And, you know, they're going to play hockey, and then they're going to watch hockey, and they're going to watch NHL, and they're going to watch women's leagues as they start popping up more and more. So I think it's just wonderful that it just shows like the growth of the game, you know, the women's game, and it's good for hockey. And it's just great to see those numbers. And you mentioned it's better than any NHL game.
At
So
least in
I
terms of
think
the
it's
numbers.
tremendous.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I really hope this kind of quiets down that talk about getting rid of women's hockey in the Olympics. I
Oh,
know that
so dumb.
was continually brought up about how it's always Canada, US, and there's no real other competition. But like, there's tons of other sports where like one or two countries dominate the sport, and you never hear about those sports being taken out. So I don't know why there's always this focus on hockey being this like, evil little sport that should be taken out of Olympics.
No.
And like, yeah, like, I mean, that is your big draw. That is your
Mhm.
big draw of these Olympics. I haven't seen any of the numbers of any of the other sports, but I could almost guarantee that is the most watched. That was the most watched program of the entire Olympics, I would estimate. So how can you get rid of it? When you're pulling in that many viewers. So hopefully that means they're around to stay for the long haul, and you just have to hope that the other countries will eventually, continue to develop their programs, their hockey programs in their countries, and develop better players and can start providing better competition in the future.
Oh, like if you look at the men's hockey, Canada dominated the first how many Winter Olympics? Where like I think I heard a stat where they won one Winter Olympics by outscoring teams like 33-3 or something ridiculous
Oh
like that.
wow,
Like
really?
yeah, like it was just a gong show. And then the
And then
Soviet
the
Union
Russians,
took
right? Yeah, Soviet
yeah,
Union. Mm-hmm.
they won how many gold medals in a row, and no one said, oh, we should take out men's ice hockey. So it's not even been it's been what 24 years since women's hockey was an Olympic sport. It's growing. Like, if you look at how it was in 98 compared to now, like it's growing in terms of popularity. The players' skills are growing, and other countries are growing as well. And they're, playing the game, and more women across the globe are playing the game.
Yeah, and it's fantastic hockey too. Like, it was
Yeah.
very entertaining hockey. Like, I kind of remember back then hearing like, oh, it's women's hockey. Like, it's not as good. I remember hearing that kind of talk. Like, no one's saying that nowadays.
No.
You watch the hockey, is absolutely entertaining and fantastic hockey. And yeah, it was great. I definitely do not regret staying up all night to watch it, even though I was exhausted the next day. But what can you do?
That the women's game, gold medal game, I think it was Pyeongchang, or it might have been even before that. It might have been in Sochi. But the women's game where Canada scored with the empty net and then won it in overtime, I remember like at my work going into the lunchroom and watching that on TV because it was on during the day, and like all my coworkers like gathered around. We were watching the game, and it was like nowhere to lie, it was one of the best hockey games I've ever seen. It was so incredible, the drama, the tension, and the skill level to win that game. And I have a sneaky suspicion who scored the overtime winner. For Canada, it was definitely Poulin. So it's what can you say? It's tremendous hockey, and it has to stay. If they kick it out, like that would just be. They don't kick out sprinting because the Jamaicans always win the.
Oh, exactly. Like, that's what I'm
right?
saying. Or like, table tennis, because China always wins, or whoever it is. Like,
yeah, well, and it's not even Canada always wins. The US has won 2 gold medals.
Yeah.
In the sport, and one time Canada, I believe, played Sweden for the gold, and USA got bronze. I think that was 2006. So there goes that argument.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It's just brought up every Olympics. I just never get it. So we're getting close to the end of our time here. I just want to touch on one last thing. And it's a stat that I saw today on Twitter. It was from a little while ago, but the first time I saw it today, for whatever reason, it was in my feed. Earlier this season, Jake Guentzel, he became the fastest player from his 2013 draft class to record 300 career points. Wow. So that beats out draftees like Alex Barkov, Nathan McKinnon. And, these are 2 guys that are often mentioned as some of the best players in hockey. And, I'm not saying Guentzel is, up there with them, but when he's definitely very good. And when you're talking, when you hear about the best players in hockey, obviously you hear about McKinnon, he's always up there. Barkov is always mentioned as, one of the best players, if not, or at least two-way best player in the league. You don't really hear Guentzel's name mentioned, but in his draft class, fastest to 300 points. Why don't you think his name is mentioned among the best players? And do you think he should be?
Absolutely, I think he should be. I think it's because he plays in Pittsburgh. And you look at Crosby and Malkin. They're I mean, Malkin not so much anymore. I mean, he's still good player, but it's Crosby, right? That,
yeah,
you get that like, oh, well, he plays with Crosby, or he plays with, Malkin, or he does this, but he's kind of overshadowed in Pittsburgh by Crosby. And so people kind of just forget about him, right? Like, oh yeah, he's there, but I think he's one of the best players from that draft class. I mean, Monahan and Lindholm were also from that draft class.
That's true.
That was a really good draft class. Sometimes you look at drafts and you go, oh man, like no one was quality. And then you look at other drafts and you're like, damn, like the top 10 all are like contributing roster players. So I think
that was a deep draft for sure. Yeah. And I think Guentzel was taken like 77th, I think I read, or something like that. Like he was quite a bit later in the draft. So definitely a deep draft. And I agree about, being overshadowed. Like you look at McKinnon, like he's front and center in Colorado. Like obviously there's a lot of big name players there with him, but he was always the first big superstar, right? Or Barkov. Like, Huberdeau is obviously having a fantastic season, but for a while there, Huberdeau just wasn't quite reaching that potential. And it was Barkov that everyone was saying is their best player. Whereas, Guentzel has always been going to be overshadowed by Crosby and Malkin, and probably also just playing with Crosby, just like kind of Draisaitl is in Edmonton. You're not going to get your full due just because they say, well, you're only good because you play with this player, right?
Yeah, which is unfair.
But that's just the way it goes.
Yeah, it's like you got to be a good player to play with good players. Like Gary Curry didn't get 500, 600 goals just because of Gretzky, right? Like if it was easy, I could do it, and I certainly can't do it.
Well, exactly. If anyone could do it, then Nick Ritchie would still be on the first line in Toronto, putting up like 60 points, right?
Maybe he needs to go to Pittsburgh and play with Crosby.
Yeah, there you go. Touch. It's Matthew's fault. It's all Matthew's fault that Ritchie was sent. So
exactly, he's just too much of a shooter, not a passer.
All right, well, that's it for today's show. Thank you everyone for joining. Please, if you could smash that like button, comment below, tell us what you want to hear about on the next pod, subscribe. We appreciate any subscribers. Help grow our channel, would be fantastic. We love you all, so thank you so much for sticking with us. And for this week, I'm Ryan,
and I'm Sanjay,
and this is Delayed Offside. See you next week.
Delayed Offside.